investment in the supply of sites of interest, and they support preserving, supporting preserving cultural identity. Concerning the costs, of course, they can increase the cost of traffic problems, increase of the waste problem, of course, increase of prices of goods and services. These are the negative impacts, so the costs when you promote a policy related to tourism. Concerning the knowledge, citizens have, respondents have relating to the policies promoted. You see that the percentages are low. They have low knowledge of the development, of transport-related policies, and also, a bit higher concerning the tourist purpose, the tourism policies promoted by both the local and at the regional level in Campania region. But the next slide, please go on, Francesco, is very interesting because this is the core of my presentation. People, respondents, citizens feel they have low participation in the decision-making process. This is correct. People don't participate at all in Campania region, in Naples, in the initiatives promoted by, our current mayor and our current president of the Campania region. Look at the percentages. They're really low. So let's go to the very end of my presentation, please, Francesco. Of course, the main result is that respondents have a low knowledge about the policies promoted, and of course, low percentage of respondents feel they have a role in the decision-making process. I'm sure they want to, participate in the decision-making process. They want to share with roundtables, conferences, borough conferences, local borough conferences, for, having the role in the decision-making process. This is the real innovation in the transportation and tourism market decision-making process 3.0, I was saying at the very beginning. Institutions should develop the more and more policies and interventions that should be shared. Public engagement is this. Stakeholders' engagement should be considered not an option, but a condition sine qua non in any decision-making process. And then, of course, new investigations should be considered, new questionnaires should be submitted in order to have a higher sample for having a more representative sample of the population. But of course, the modeling part is what is the part that is. It is what it lacks, this paper, actually. This is my presentation. And of course, first results are already there, but they are out of the scope of this presentation. Building structure equation models in order to consider different interactions between the different subgroups of questions that you have seen. But this will be definitely presented in, why not, the next conference you will organize. Thank you very much. I hope I have respected the 10 minutes, Francesco. Thank you very much, Francesco.
Okay, thank you. Almost respected the time. We may have a couple of very short questions.
Yes.
If someone wants to come, just unmute the microphone and make the question.
I would like to ask one question, if possible.
Please.
You mentioned in the conclusions that there is a low engagement of the citizens in the decision-making process, and that it is desirable to have them more engaged. My question would be regarding how do you think it would be possible to get the people or the citizens to be more engaged in the decision-making process?
Yes. Okay, I would like to start saying to you that public engagement is an institution in some countries of the world. For example, in France. France has a law, which is the Barnier Law of 1995, and they consider the débat public, the public engagement within the decision-making process for projects which have a cost of, more than 10 million euros, for example. And I want to tell you one thing concerning Italy. There is the Nuovo Codice degli Appalti, and there is an article of this law of the year 2016, where public engagement or stakeholders engagement has become a law in Italy as well, but for big projects. for, very small projects, like, for example, the limited traffic zone in the city of Naples, for example, you don't have the engagement. This is not good, because you can imagine how a limited traffic zone in a city will change and will affect travel behavior and the life of citizens. So I think that even if these laws exist at the national level for just big projects, they should be adapted even for, small projects, because people would like to share. For example, I live in a part of the city of Naples where I have, there is a street very close to the sea that is forbidden to cars. And this is a problem for me, because I cannot go from one part of the city to the other part of the city. I can choose just one street. And when the mayor of the city of Naples decided that this decision, this was a decision from the above. It was still a decision-making process 1.0, And we are, far from this. We cannot accept this anymore. I mean, we really need to do something in order to, share, in order to make citizens involved. So this, for example, how to do that on the city, for example, on the website of the city, of the municipal city of Naples, there should be, a kind of blog where citizens could have a word concerning the initiatives promoted by the mayor of the city of Naples. Why not?
So you're saying that the citizens are willing to get engaged, to participate, but they don't have the chance.
See, and I would like to tell you one more thing, Valentin, right? Your name is Valentin. Valentin, yes. You should know one thing. Barack Obama, in the year 2009, he did a big job. He introduced the Office of Public Engagement. Of course, it was off with Donald Trump. Of course, you can imagine. Barack Obama introduced the Office of Public Engagement, and on the website of the White House, he introduced a blog where the citizens of the, United States could have a word there. I mean, could have a voice, relating to the initiatives promoted by the White House, the president of the White House. And of course, with Donald Trump, this office was off, was completely, it was eliminated. Okay. But you can imagine, of course. So a blog on the website. Okay.
We have to go on, Francesca.
Sorry,
I don't want to stop you because you are completely involved in this subject. I appreciate a lot.
I just want to say that I'm sorry that I didn't present the modeling part. Sorry, Francesco. Sorry, everybody.
Okay. Time is very short for us. Okay, let's go on with the second paper, and we have Mauro D'Apuzzo. Yes. Simplified approach for liquefaction risk assessment of transportation system preliminary outcomes. Mario, please. 8 minutes plus discussion.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Before I will commence, I am definitely agree with what Francesca told before, because actually I live close to Francesca in Naples, and I agree. I definitely agree to what she said. Anyway, let's go straight to another issue that I hope it will interest you. We will talk about liquefaction risk assessment, and obviously on impact on transportation system induced by liquefaction phenomena. First, I want to thank my co-author, Professor Giuseppe Modoni, and Professor from University of Cassino, Professor Vittorio Nicolosi from University of Rome Tor Vergata, and also other important co-authors, engineering Azzurra Evangelisti, Rosalind Spacagna, Luca Paolella, and Daniela Santilli. I will give you a brief outline of my presentation. I will introduce the problem of liquefaction, then I will focus on liquefaction risk assessment, then I will move on the impact on road transport network related to damage induced by liquefaction phenomena. And then I will show how this framework, analysis framework, has been applied to a case study that is located in Terra del Reno, that is a province in Emilia-Romagna in the northern Italy. And obviously I will show some conclusion. So liquefaction damage is something that most of you surely know is a damage related to a loss of shear strength that involves silty and sandy soils, poorly compacted sandy soils, when they undergo to some sort of seismic excitation. Results of this phenomenon is a huge settlements that are developed, and a huge damage over a very wide area, and we have lots of sad phenomena, liquefaction phenomena in the Niigata earthquake, for example, or in Christchurch earthquake. And obviously we have some liquefaction phenomenon, significant liquefaction phenomenon, also in the recent earthquake occurred in Emilia-Romagna in 2012. Obviously, within a liquefaction risk assessment framework, we, on a more conventional approach, we try to characterize the earthquake scenarios and try to evaluate the expected damage as far as the liquefaction evidence is concerned, in order to obtain some sort of validation for some prediction model. But if we are interested in the risk analysis, we obviously have to evaluate the problem on a probabilistic approach, and then we have to evaluate what we call an expected damage, and obviously all related estimated losses. Among these losses that obviously can be considered simply the casualties or the building damage, there are some additional costs I will show you. On a risk-based approach, obviously the liquefaction risk is related, it can be expressed as a function of hazard. That means the evaluation of the liquefaction potential, but it's also related to the vulnerability. In this case, the vulnerability of road embankment that are that undergo to a liquefaction phenomena. And finally, we have to evaluate the exposure. The exposure, as far as the hazard related to the evaluation of liquefaction potential, significant parameter then affect the liquefaction potential are the thickness of liquefiable layer and of the overlaying crust, and obviously also the layout of road embankment. Whereas as far as the vulnerability, it means that we are interested in evaluate how a specific item in this connection, a road embankment, can be damaged because of a specific liquefaction phenomena. We usually refer to some sort of conventional damage level that are expressed in terms of peak vertical ground displacement. And according to the scientific literature, we can have at least 3 damage level: minor, moderate, and extensive. And obviously, the important thing is to convert this damage into impact on transport, into damage that will affect the transport network, we may say behavior, in the area involved in the liquefaction phenomena. So if the settlements that will experiment the road embankment are minor, we can assume a general vehicle speed reduction, whereas if the damage is extensive, we can assume that the road will be closed for a certain period in order to be obviously restored. But the interesting thing that I want to focus in this work is the concept of exposure that conventionally is related to casualty and building damage, but in our approach and in the methodological framework we developed is also an additional exposure parameter that is related to the socioeconomic damage. What we consider as socioeconomic damage, a damage related mainly to the total delay cost. We mean the cost that is related when there is a huge damage induced by soil liquefaction. The road is closed, so obviously the pattern, the traffic pattern of the area involved in this damage will be affected by road disruptions, and therefore road user will be forced to choose alternative path for their trip, and they will experiment obviously some delay related to the road disruptions. So we want to evaluate this sort of social cost, but we can also recognize that if we want to analyze the problem, the wider problem of vulnerability of transportation networks when is impacted by an earthquake, we can identify different approach, different analysis. A simple vulnerability analysis is related to the level of damage caused by an earthquake. A connectivity analysis that is related to the problem, to the issue of accessibility, how the accessibility is impacted by an earthquake. Obviously, a capacity analysis, that is the analysis that we have developed for our case study, that will provide us some usable information on the delay cost that will be experimented by road user traveling in the study area. And obviously we can go also further and identify an serviceability analysis that will imply a much higher and deep economic analysis of impact related to the damage induced by earthquake. In order to evaluate how the traffic pattern will be affected by the damage and the road disruption caused by liquefaction phenomena, obviously we have to develop a typical travel demand forecasting model. That is a model that is a typical four-stage model, is a model that is used extensively used in transportation planning. And obviously the main features of this model is based on a area discretization. So you have to identify different traffic zone with their centroid, the central point of each zone, where you can assume to concentrate the origin and the destination of each trip occurring in the study area. We developed and applied this zone into a specific area that was impacted by the 2012 earthquake occurred in 20 of May in Emilia-Romagna, famous earthquake. We focus on the Terre del Reno area, that is an area where are located the three main village, we may say Mirabello, San Carlo, and Sant'Agostino. It's a very important area because there is a very important industrial districts, and obviously the area is obviously characterized by some liquefiable soil. So the first thing that we have to consider is the extension of the study area. And we obviously consider different analysis area, considering a circular buffer with variable radius. And we compare the estimation, the traffic flows estimation provided by the model, the travel demand model, with the traffic counts that were made available by Emilia-Romagna region, Emilia-Romagna Transport Agency. And we came up with the results that we need to evaluate a very wider area, 60 kilometer with a radius of 60 kilometers long, because in order to analyze the traffic pattern in the Terre del Reno, there is a very high fraction of through traffic that traveling across Terre del Reno. So we need to extend the analysis area to capture this specific traffic. This is the zoning of the travel demand forecasting model. Terre del Reno is the traffic zone in the center area. And this is the transport supply model highlighting the road network in the study area. As far as the liquefaction potential, the evaluation of liquefaction potential, we use a modified Karamitros model that is based on, as I told you, the thickness of the liquefiable layer, the thickness of the underlying crust layer, the embankment height, and obviously the geotechnical properties of the soils in the study area. And we came up with this evaluation of the settlements, and obviously we will go through also the evaluation of the damage level. And with this damage scenarios, we developed the the ex ante traffic scenarios for the study area and the ex post traffic scenarios. And we are approaching to the end, and obviously according to two main peak hour and off peak hour period, we came up with an evaluation of the total delay cost related to the earthquake that occurred in 212. So a seismic liquefaction risk assessment of road transportation networks as a combination of hazard, vulnerability, and exposure and speed proposed. Obviously, this is a sort of combination, is a result of a research partnership between geotechnical and road and transportation engineering. And obviously, the methodology has been applied to a case studies and could provide some support tool for road manager or road administration to evaluate some sort of prioritization of mitigation action to be implemented in case of liquefaction. Thank you for your attention.
Okay, just a very one short question, please. Can be used also to reinforce the preparedness. not only the intervention during the crisis.
Yes. Could be also used in this sense. Obviously, these are preliminary results that are developed within a European project that is named Liquefact, where we were involved as University of Cassino. In that project, the main focus was also to evaluate what we call the social cost. But obviously, we can also use these tools in order to evaluate, as you told, the preparedness in a specific area. But the original thing is to consider also these social costs. That is quite original, because usually in the scientific literature you cannot encounter this kind of approach combining geotechnical evaluation and transport impacts.
Okay, thank you very much.
Let's
go on to the next presentation. I believe that we have Maria Macchiaroli.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. The paper is application to a player operating in Italy of an AHP model for the identification of the most advantageous technical alternative in the management of the integrated water service. Very interesting and concrete application.
I can not able to share my screen. Why?
Let's try again.
Yes.
It's probably the same problem of Francesca.
Maria, try to refresh your page. And
okay.
What type?
Did you upload your presentation in Riot?
Ok, no, purtroppo rimane praticamente il tastino di condividi, non esce, non è possibile cliccarci su perché.
Maria,
è la stessa cosa che è successa a me, Maria.
Ma per caso state su un browser diverso da Chrome?
Esatto.
Sì.
Provate a scaricare e usare Google Chrome.
Okay. I will share your presentation from my screen and we go on.
Yes, but there is no animation. Can I try? Posso provare un attimo da Chrome, visto che l'ho già scaricato, così non perdiamo tempo. Only a second.
Okay, Maria will come back. And then we have the paper of Domenico Camarda. Probably there is Giulia connected, yes?
Yes, here I am. Can you hear me?
Okay, perfect. Domenico is not here.
No.
Yes,
I'm Giulia. Can you hear me?
Okay. Yes. Let's wait Maria before and then we proceed with you.
Me?
Okay, let's try again.
Okay, I try, but it is not possible neanche da Chrome. Se possiamo procedere con la presentazione in PDF.
Ok, dai, la metto io.
Grazie. È strano però.
Oh.
Can you see my screen? No.
No.
Few seconds and I'm ready to share my.
Okay, can you see my screen now?
Okay, now yes.
Okay.
Okay, now.
I'm sorry. Well, this is the summary of this presentation. We are going to characterize the context of integrated water service in Italy. I'll briefly show you Italian regulation, and then I'll speak about the proposed model and the application to a real case. First of all, it's necessary describing the context of integrated urban water service in Italy, because there are problems like the current climate change that have caused a growing attention to the use of water resources. Moreover, Italy is living a long period of economic crisis, so it became more important the check of costs during the entire process of projecting. But there are also specific problems of integrated water service in Italy. In fact, we have that the infrastructures, the networks, the pipes are very ancient. We have that real losses are very significant, especially in the south of Italy. We have that water tariff is among the lowest tariffs in the European countries. And we have that the estimate of the necessary investment in the sector is about twice the amount of planned investments. But it is not all. In fact, we have also the lack of horizontal integration, because we have a big number of utilities who are very heterogeneous, from little municipalities with also 500 users to big society with 103 million of users, like HERA, like ACEA. We have the lack of a vertical integration of activities, because water supply, sewage, wastewater treatments are managed by different society, and this causes big difficulties to produce economies of scale in the management of activities. Moreover, only since 2012 there is a national authority of regulation in water service. This company is ARERA, Regulatory Authority for Energy Networks and Environment. In particular, the present Italian regulation is defined as multi-level because there is a national authority, ARERA, some local authority, enti di governo dell'ambito, and then there are the operators, the utilities who actually manage the integrated water service. So there is the need of improve the management of resources in water sectors, improve the management not only of water resources, but also the management of financial resources too. With this work, we propose a model we can be able to selection investment that efficiently satisfy the needs derived from different social groups, and that for these are often different and conflicting. This is the main resolution of Italian regulation imposed by ARERA. In particular, operators must be in compliance with all resolution, or they undergo a determining ex officio the water tariff with a reduction of 10%. One of the most complex issues of this regulation is the defining of the water tariff. In particular, as you can see in this table, the method is based on asymmetric regulation with the purpose of considering the very different kind of utilities. And this asymmetric regulation based on different criteria to define the water tariff. In particular, these criteria depend on both the per person management cost and the ratio of the need of investment, IP, and the value of available infrastructure, RAB, real asset base. So, in order to quantify the need of investment, the operators, together with the local authority in a shared decision process, must define the program of interventions that identifies in detail the investment that utility will have to carry out within the regulatory period. The program of intervention is an instrument with the
I cannot hear anymore, Francesco.
Me too.
Okay.
Me too. Maria.
Me too.
Maybe he has a problem with the connection.
Let's try to wait for the reconnection because she already. Maria, did you come back? No.
No.
Professor?
Maria?
Okay,
Yes.
Maria, let's go on.
Ok, io vi
Go on
sento.
fast, very fast, because
Okay, I try. Yes, this is the contents of program of intervention. In particular, I'll show you some of steps. One of these steps is to identify the criticalities in the management area of the operators among the critical issues defined by national authorities, about 130, and classified in these 8 thematic areas. As you can see, some areas relate to management problems, others refers to technical problems. Moreover, the utility sorry, I'm not in presentation. Moreover, the utility must measure the identified critical issue, the identified criticalities on the basis of the list provided by ARERA or on the basis of its own professional experience. It depends on the availability of data. Then, for each identified criticality, the local authority and the operators will have to agree to identify the action to be included in the program of intervention in order to reduce the impact of criticality. This with respect to a multiplicity of possible project solutions, including the zero option. In particular, the selection process of best project solution must be explicit and verifiable because of ARERA establishes the need to adopt evaluation techniques ratified by scientific bibliography for the choice of intervention alternatives. Where now I'm going to explain the structure of the model. This model has 2 steps and some sub-steps. Step F1, selection and measuring of criticalities. Step F2, design option. During the step F1, operators must selection criticalities. During the step F1-2, operators must measure the critical issue. While, moreover, during the step F2-1, identification of alternatives, these steps involves the construction of the design alternatives useful to reduce or cancel the impact of any critical issues. This sub-step F2-1 is quite complex because it involves lots of expertise, engineering, management, legal, socioeconomics, and so on. And so it is a multidisciplinary matter. In fact, for some critical issues, solutions are circumscribed. For example, to reach unserved utilities, it is possible to build a new network or to verify conditions for direct drainage from groundwater. But there are some problems. For these problems, a greater planning articulation is required. For example, to reduce water losses, it is possible to manage pressure, repair pipes, substitute pipes, and so on. Step F2-2, the effect of alternatives, it is the quantification of the progress of the improvement measured for each criticalities in relation to the potential realization of each project alternatives. Finally, step F2-3, selection of best alternative that in my model is made using the AHP analysis. Now I'd like to show an application of this model to a real case developed by an operator in the southern of Italy under the guidance of the research group that has produced this work. These are some information about this operator, and then I will show you the implementation of the phases. We are illustrated in the previous flow chart.
Maria, I ask you to go really to the essential things because we are very...
Yes, okay. This is the implementation of the step F122, the selection of criticalities in area, knowledge of infrastructure, water collection, water supply, and so on. This is the identification of the design option for the different criticalities, while this is the implementation of the hierarchy AHP, the comparative hierarchy. At the first level, we have the goal of the analysis, the best action in order to reduce the critical issue. At the second level, we have the evaluation criteria. At the third, the alternatives to be compared. In particular, this is the model's original elements related to regulatory approach. That is the models allows to elicit project alternatives that may be relevant to more than one criticality, and the model introduces new criteria that take into account the impact of project solution in terms of population concerned, investment costs required by the project solution, cost of maintenance associated with the project solution. File, this is some numerical information about the result of application, but I have not enough time, so I can go to the conclusion. The conclusion, the model is completely in compliance with regulatory resolution. It simplifies the process of selecting critical issue, accompanies the operators in the correct identification of technical parameters, introduce 3 new criteria that enhance the social and economic profile of project, simplify the selection of technical solutions that have widespread positive effects on multiple levels problems, thus reducing obviously intervention time while respecting the principle of maximum cost effectiveness of the intervention. And finally, the model can help the consultation between the public and private sectors by rationalizing the shared decision process. However, it should be noted that the model discounts still relevant informative asymmetry because operators are often the only holder of knowledge about asset stock and cost of production factors. Okay, it was very tired.
Okay. No, thank you. Thank you. Your work needs
I'm sorry for the technical
discussed.
problems. I don't know because we have these technical problems, but this is.
Okay, we are resilient. Okay, let's go on to the final presentation of the session. And we have Giulia Mastrodonato and Domenico Caparda, spatial knowledge in large-scale environments, a preliminary planning-oriented study. Giulia. Oh no. Giulia, ci sei?
Can you hear me?
Now, yes. Okay.
I try to share the screen. Okay. I don't. Okay, this one. Okay. Can you see it?
It works. Okay.
Okay. Hello everybody. I'm Giulia Mastrodonato from Polytechnic of Bari, and this is our presentation of spatial knowledge. As we know, strategic planning has recently focused its attention on elements that characterize the space through which agents move, paying particular attention on the way in which people, agents, humans incorporate these elements. Actually, during navigation, agents are influenced by a series of implicit factors, such as perception, feelings, emotions, and although they strongly characterize the surrounding environment, quite often they are tacit. This is true at different levels, at micro scale, at mesoscale, and macro scale, although at this level, research is still limited, but underway. Our work focuses on the problems of orientation in spaces with extremely reduced population, trying to capture this element, the element that strikes users' attention. In particular, we try to analyze how users identify these features that really characterize the environment during spatial navigation in these open spaces. And this is very useful because they can be interpreted as a point of reference, so they can support the task of navigation. And we decided to carry out this experiment in open area because these spaces seem apparently really poor if compared to urban settlements. And probably in this condition can be easier to elicit this kind of element that actually strike the user attentions and therefore they be considered as a crucial spatial variable. Don't forget that all these elements are able to trigger perception, sensation, relationship. We analyze in particular the way how these activities are carried out. Obviously, structured spaces are easier to navigate because we find simple geometries, elementary paths. We have few decisions to take. On the contrary, is that the navigation through unstructured spaces can be sometimes very demanding. Even more difficult can be the comprehension and navigation through rural space, where quite often it's impossible to distinguish between the starting points and the ending points. In this particular situation, perception can play a very important role because they influence not only the evaluation, the assessment of the surrounding spaces, but also the human behavior. As we know, in fact, humans prefer some elements of the landscape. And all this information can be very helpful for planners and designers in the decision-making process. In our case study, we carried out an experimentation campaign with students of the course of Planning and Urban Transformation of Polytechnic of Bari. Each agent could choose freely a travel in an open rural spaces, and during his navigation could take photos of the elements that they considered very interesting, and they could write down notes like sensation, perception, emotions along the way. At the moment, by now, we have just analyzed 16 observations out of 180 observations collect completely. And this is the experimentation portal. This is an example of a route and photo taken by some agents, one agent in particular. And this is another example. We can see here some note you wrote down. Oh, okay, this one is the older dataset connect to the cluster conceptual categories we defined. In fact, to analyze the data, we use a data mining software which allowed the collections of the text annotation. So we could choose based on the frequency, which could choose some keywords or some concepts that were recurrent. And actually, this is we had defined the conceptual categories before. As a general objective of the experimentation, we tried to draw a correlations between elements present in the experimentation protocols. And as a specific objective, we tried to identify the possible dependence of sensations and perception from the other elements in the protocol. To do this, we use the statistical method, in particular a multiple regression, and we can see here the regression equation. Let's go to some results. As we can say, that correlation show that sensations increase during navigation when pollution and dissipation of resources appear on the road. This is probably due to the fact that people people care for the surrounding environment. Taking care, in fact, is a typical Western cultural phenomenon able to trigger immediate reactions. Plus, care implies participation in maintenance of landscape, which results into benefit for all of us. Moreover, we find out that aesthetic and sensory experiences are very important. Plus, sensation showed mixed correlations with built and artificial features, increasing when users see buildings and streets, and decreasing with plants and installation. This can be apparently strange, but we have to consider the fact that the sample was really homogeneous, composed only by students at our university, so probably they could feel somehow the responsibility in designing the environment. Or, on the other hand, it could depend on the fact that these elements stand out as a very visible emergencies, and therefore they became a sort of landmark in a territory that otherwise would have been too homogeneous. There are some considerations to do from a spatial geographical point of view. For instance, when the distance from the agent's place of residence and route length increased, then sensation increased too. This is probably due to the fact that it was a new environment, so they were curious, or some other consideration from a spatial cognition point of view. In particular, we can say that recoding of perception reduces with the approach of the end of the path on the way back. Actually, there was no need to update information, to update their path integration vectors, because they could recognize the end point. We have just to remember that the process of path integration is possible thanks to information that comes from our senses through sight or from our body through proprioceptions. We have to say that there are some limits in this research. For instance, categorical aggregation is developed in a raw manner, but this study is at the very beginning stage. But nevertheless, interesting suggestions and direction can be drawn out. For instance, sensation seems to show a general little correlation to the perception of dimensional and topographical aspects, while appearing more correlated to contextual and qualifying elements. Perception of an open space still depends on some recurring physical and landscape features. Perception are very important in identifying environmental resources for sustainable community development and for spatial planning aims. In fact, if an open spaces are not perceived positively, they will not use even if available. Finally, knowing perception, needs, and preferences of users before making decisions on planning open spaces helps create natural environment that encourage people to use them. It is clear to everybody that the contact with natural environment represents a moment of psychological restoration for those who live in urban areas. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Very interesting. Any question? Very, very quickly, because we are out of time. Just curiosity from my side. I really think that perception analysis is one of the drivers in order to orient specific case study analysis concerning the landscape and so on. But you use as agents in this application people that have in their background how can I say the fact that you send them to do this because they are students, because they are involved in the process, because they bring a positive attitude toward these activities, and provided for you several interesting results. I believe that it is very strongly dependent on the fact that those those students used a specific platform to collect those information. I think that the platform is a kind of yes, a facilitating tool to realize the analysis, but also a tool that doesn't allow to get how can I say, a real consideration of the common people, not of a student or a technician who has a background information that strongly informed him in advance concerning those activities. So, do you have any chance to use, for instance, social network data in order to understand common people perception of these activities?
Okay, thank you. As you have seen, we carried out this experimentation almost 3 years ago, and now we are trying to analyze the results and, of course, to extend this result and to involve more people using social network too. Yes, yes, this is in our future ideas.
Okay. Let's go with the next session. I ask Valentin, you are still connected to take the floor. Okay, and to conduct the session. Thank you all the presenters. Thank you all of you for the participation.
Thank you, Francesco.
Thank you, Francesco.
Thank you, Francesco.
Francesco, I will remind you to fill the evaluation form for each paper. And,
yes. Thank you. Okay.
Thank you. And Valentin, my name is Valentina. I present myself, and I am the assistant for this section.
All right, perfect.
Okay.
So it is an honor to participate at this conference and chair this session. And we are a little bit on delayed, so we will start with the first presentation, Assessing Integration Performance in Coastal and Marine Protected Areas, a document-based approach. Do we have presenters ready online?
Yeah, we are ready. Julia, could you please stop sharing your screen? Julia?
Can you hear me?
Could you please stop sharing your screen?
Oh, yeah.
Thank you. Federica?
Yeah?
Okay.
I'm still sharing. Sorry, I cannot see.
Yes, I see your screen. Okay.
Oh. Okay.
Can you see the presentation?
Yes. Goodbye, everyone. My name is Sabrina Lai. I'm an assistant professor at the University of Cagliari, and I present this piece of research with my colleague Federica Leone. We're both based at the Department of Civil and Environmental Engineering and Architecture. This piece of research is about integration and how to assess integration in coastal and marine protected areas. Next, please. Coastal areas are transitional spaces where land and sea meet, and they are fragile from an environmental point of view because of the many pressures from development, from conflicting uses in the coastal areas. One typical policy response to this issue is the establishment of marine protected areas. You see a map here concerning the various kinds of marine protected areas in the Mediterranean. Still, that's not a definitive solution, because even in marine protected areas, we have silo mentality, which means that a lot of tools coexist, different kinds of governance institutions coexist, and they still conflict and overlap. So one issue is that of scarce coordination and integration. Next, please, which is what we want to, please stop sharing, which is what we want to address. Many authors have studied barriers to institution and coordinations. These are just a couple of examples in the slides. and some have proposed frameworks to assess integrations. These frameworks can be two-dimensional, three-dimensional, even six-dimensional, and they do evaluate integration based on a number of factors. But none of them assesses integration on the basis of compulsory planning tools which are enforced in the coastal zone. Next, please. And for this reason, we started by analyzing both legally binding documents and voluntary agreements which are enforced in coastal areas. The most prominent of these is nowadays the second in the slide, the EU directive that establishes a framework for maritime spatial planning. We see also a lot of presentation in this conference about this topic. Next, please. So from these documents, we elicited from reading and coding the text 6 dimensions of integration, which you see here: spatial, institutional and administrative, functional, socioeconomic, environmental, and planning. Then what we did next, please, is we developed the metrics. Here is just a synthetic metrics where we looked at how each of the tools, both legally binding and voluntary, treated a specific dimension of integration. Next, please. This is just an example of how we did. So for each document, we read the document, coded it, and selected relevant sentences. Next, please. And I'm going to give the word to Federica.
So, to test the framework, we select 2 Italian case studies characterized by a high level of complexity of their respective governance frameworks. The first case study in Sardinia comprises Asinara National Park, the Asinara Island Marine Protect Area, as well as 3 Natura 2000 sites. The second in Liguria comprises Portofino Natural Regional Park, the Portofino MPA, and 4 Natura 2000 sites. The 2 consequent slides show a summary of the results of our analysis in relation to the 2 case studies. I do not describe in detail due to the limited time, but in sum, the result of this analysis show that each tool appears to be specifically focused on complying with its own normative framework, and all of them are far from contributing to building a truly integrated approach to coastal and marine area management. One possible reason for this has to do with the fact that various categories of protected areas coexist in the hierarchical and multi-tier Italian institutional arena, where each type of protected areas pursues its own mission and needs to comply strictly with the legal act, such as, for example, national law, regional law, and the European directive, upon which its establishment is grounded. For this reason, separate management bodies are often established, which, in the absence of a dialogue and of clear mandates for cooperation, may result in parallel or even competing management of the territory. Integration in coastal areas represents a key aspect of sustainability. Following the 17 Sustainability Development Goals, sustainability should be implemented in practical application and not only in theoretical global policies and strategies. Practical application concern various activities such as management of natural resources, mitigation and adaptation to climate change, and so on. Marine and coastal areas are characterized by the existence of several regulatory and planning tools that govern a specific aspect concerning human activities. Therefore, coordination and integration have been advocated as necessary in order to deal with problem and practical aspects that should be managed in terms of sustainability. In this study, we have proposed a 6-dimensional framework to assess the level of integration emerging from planning documents in coastal and marine areas, characterized by the coexistence of a number of compulsory planning tools. In terms of innovative aspects, contrary to what happened in previous studies, was frameworks developed on the basis of a theoretical standpoint and are therefore grounded on a priori assumption concerning the ontology of the integration concept. In this work, the integration dimension emerged from the wording of both legally binding documents and the soft laws enforced in the Mediterranean Sea basin area, and therefore are not predefined. Since the framework was built on the basis of legal act, directive, and voluntary agreements ratified by countries belonging to the European Union concerning integrated management of coastal marine areas, the method proposed and applied in this study can be replicated in other coastal and marine protected areas in the northern Mediterranean area, while further research is needed to understand to what extent the framework can be useful in non-European Union countries in the South American region, and what amendments will be required due to the different legal frameworks concerning nature protection and management of coastal marine protected areas. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much for your presentation, Sabrina and Federica. It was a very well-structured presentation. Are there any questions from the audience? I have a curiosity myself. You mentioned about integration compulsory planning tools, and they somehow overlap, as I understand. Do these tools apply only for European countries, or are there worldwide commitment tools?
Some of them are only belonging to the Italian context, because one of the tools which we analyzed was the management plan for Natura 2000 sites, and Natura 2000 is a kind of European natural protected area. To the contrary, when we look at marine protected areas, then worldwide there's some kind of document which they need to have. In Italy, that takes the form of a regulation, which is a document stating what you can and what you cannot do. In some other countries, it could take other forms, but it's still there. So it's a mix of the two.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
So if there are no more questions for this presentation, I would suggest to go further on to the next presentation, water management and municipal climate adaptation plans, a preliminary assessment for flood risk management at urban scale. Are we ready to present?
Yeah.
Okay.
Could you see?
Yes.
Okay.
Ready to go.
Yeah. Good afternoon. I'm Luigi Santopietro, and I'm an environmental engineer of Laboratory of Urban and Regional System Engineering of University of Basilicata. In urban areas, local flooding might occur as a combined result of heavy rains and poor or insufficient drainage system that's unable to drain out the water discharge efficiently. The impermeability of the soil is one of the effects of the urbanization that most impact. The reduction of the amount of water infiltration with the consequent reduction of local groundwater recharging, the increase of runoff, the reduction of the time of concentration of a watershed, and the decay of a natural ecosystem because of pollution overload. This study involved 13 sub-catchments area located in the urban area of the municipality of Potenza in southern Italy. The municipal area is densely populated. The percentage of consumed soil according to European Environmental Agency in the framework of the Copernicus Land Monitoring System is 38.01 that of the entire territory, and the urban spurs on the lowest catchments area near the Basento rivers with many clustered settlements. The basic concept of the methodology is to combine heterogeneous components in view of an integrated territorial management. Firstly, the sealed sinkhole morphology has been evaluated as potential area of runoff accumulation by merging the digital elevation model of the urban area with the imperviousness data distributed by a European Environmental Agency in the framework of Copernicus Land Monitoring Service. The hydrological analysis of a catchment performed through the grass air watershed algorithm also provided the raster map of the surface flow accumulation, which has helped to discriminate the sinkholes in categories as shown in feature. Local floods and runoff coefficients are strictly correlated. Here, the Kenessi method has been considered to estimate the runoff coefficients. This choice has been justified by the accuracy of this physiographic approach and by its simple adaptability to this environment. Therefore, in order to identify the potential flood areas and evaluate the priority site for taking action, the morphometric and hydrological parameters are combined with the distribution map of urban service and infrastructures through a spatial analytic hierarchy approach, thereby achieving a suitability weighted model. The results from spatial analysis calculated on 7 criteria of land suitability allow to efficiently evaluating the potentially exposed site that would require intervention at water management level. The analysis evidence of how catchment number 1, number 2, and number 3 in order of importance require priority measures. Indeed, it's not a coincidence that for these catchments, the soil seeding percentage are among the highest recorded in all the sub-catchment analyzed, as it can be observed in table and in feature. Making a comparison between catchment with similar geomorphological feature with the coefficient of acclivity of Kenessi method show an average of 0.124 and quite limited the standard deviation of 0.03. The relationship between imperviousness and runoff coefficients is very high. While this is a preliminary flood risk analysis, results look promising for the assessment of potential risk-prone sites in which local flood might be considered like to occur. Indeed, developed on open-source data, this approach results very flexible and can be used as a preliminary tool for urban stormwater management. The support of land suitability can answer to the question, where is the best location, and strengthen the place-based approach chosen by the authors. The link between the land suitability and CCAP in a place-based approach could be found in sectors such as water, agriculture, and forest or environment and biodiversity that tie actions proposed by CCAP to a territorial dimension. The proposed framework might be a tool to identify mitigation action to be developed in the CCAP for Potenza municipality. In this slide are presented some of possible actions developed for CCAP of Potenza municipality, such as extensive green roof, draining pavements, or rain garden, widely disseminated in Europe. For every action is suggested a cost range to have an idea for sizing of the investments. The methodological approach suggested in this paper, while not comprehensive, allows to obtain a preliminary scenario that highlights the weakness of a territory due to the obsolescence of urban water infrastructures. In the shared perspective of resilient cities, the proposed approach may be useful not also in defining of appropriate climate change adaptation strategies for the delineation of CCAP's action by the decision makers, but also in the awareness of the citizen to climate change. A tool to develop local climate change, as example CCAP, is a useful and quick framework to find areas more critical and sites the investment and action to urban scale. In order to use this framework in different urban contexts as potential future development of this study, a potential integration looks at using remote sizing techniques for searching all the feasible areas in which over the years unexpected flood has occurred. However, the identification of these areas by applying passive remote sensing may be hindered by the steady cloudy sky that, after a heavy rainfall, does not allow to clearly acquire image from the soil. In this case, the use of satellite active sensors, such as microwaves, is highly recommended, albeit it's currently a very expensive procedure for the treasury of a small municipality like that one of Potenza. In this perspective, future developments are oriented to improve this framework as a support system in order to identify more effective action for SICAP, ensuring positive environmental impacts of multiple metrics, helping local decision makers, public administrators, and stakeholders into decision-maker progress. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Luigi, for your presentation. Are there any questions regarding this research? Okay, I will have to ask myself one question. I visited the region of Potenza, and my question would be, have you calculated the impact of urban flooding in the region of Potenza?
No, sorry, I don't understand the last part of your answer, please.
So I was asking if you have calculated the impact of urban flooding on the region of Potenza.
No, at this moment, no, because it was limited to urban area of Potenza municipality, but is a future perspective as a suggestion. Thank you.
All right, thank you for your answer and for your presentation. If there are no more questions, then I suggest we move to the next presentation. And this is hybrid-oriented sustainable urban development, a pattern of low-carbon access to schools in the city of Potenza. So who will present this one?
Good evening to all participants. I am Giovanni Fortunato. I'm going to present our research work. This study analyzes the urban city network of the city of Potenza in Basilicata region in order to provide input for a sustainable urban mobility-based strategy, enabling in particular students to reach schools through the use of soft, active, and clean mobility modes. In particular, in order to analyze street network layout within Potenza's urban area, we have used the place syntax analysis that combines space syntax analysis and GIS methods within urban space morphology research. The place syntax analysis allows to perform the analysis of the spatial configuration of streets, taking into account space functional component, the location of spatial opportunities, and space morphological component in terms of street network layout. In fact, the place syntax analysis takes into account urban form in terms of configuration characteristics that depend on mutual position of street elements, street segments in the network, and the location of destination. In our study, we have focused on schools as attraction objects and special opportunities. These two elements, urban form and the location of destinations, contribute to increasing the share of walking and cycling and active transport mode in general. In our study, we have evaluated the potential integration between active transport mode and public transport in the city of Potenza and the design of a widespread and direct network of cycle paths in order to and from the railway stations in order to encourage chain mobility with view to hybrid-oriented sustainable urban development. The place syntax analysis includes theoretical principles of the space syntax analysis, a set of theories, techniques, and a set of parameters for the representation, quantification, and interpretation of spatial configuration in buildings and settlements. But place syntax analysis is based on the concept of place, and like the concept And like the concept of space within the space syntax analysis framework, within place syntax analysis framework, place means a geographically specific space, allocation of space with a specific content. In fact, the place syntax analysis allows to load geographical data in order to do analysis in relation to pedestrian movement. Within the place syntax analysis, we have computed attraction betterness. That is, and with reference to mathematical graph theory, it is a street network centrality measures, and it calculates how often a space unit street segment falls on the short spot between all pairs of spatial units in a system, while capturing the true movement of a specific street segment. And this centrality measures how important street is as a true road for the network in order to reach the school in our case study. As shown by in the formula, the outputs of this analysis depend not only on the street network layout, such as in place index, such as it happens in space index analysis, but also on the attractiveness of the urban destination, the number and location of attractions. In this study, we have mapped the schools and within the urban area of Potenza, and our source is the website of the Italian Ministry of Education. In the JS environment, we have mapped the schools, and the schools, every school is characterized by a specific, certain and quantitative attractiveness capacity that depend on the number of the students. In the JS environment, we have obtained street segment map, street network segment map from the street central line map. And then, as shown in the figure on the side and right, it is transformed in network graph representation, where every street segment is a node and every crossing point provides an edge. Finally, we have post-processed results in order to obtain attraction-based configuration maps. From this map, we can imagine that in Potenza's urban area, there are 47 schools. 80% of schools have less than 435 students, and about 4% of them have a student population of more than 800. In addition, from this map, it is possible to imagine that most of the schools are located northwest of the historic center, identified by the letter A in this map, in Verderolo district and the Poggio Tregalo district, where there is the mouse cursor. And this area, these districts, are served by 2 railway stations in red circle in the map, along the national and the interregional railway network. Then, after mapping the schools that shows the well-supplied area in terms of schools and the location of schools, we have considered in our attraction betterness-based analysis 2 different scenarios in relation to the threshold distance. In the first scenario, we set a threshold radius of 1,500 meters as walking distance to perform an analysis compatible with walking. And in this map and the next, the spatial network analysis shows the most chosen paths in dark blue. From this map, it emerged that how most of the schools in red circles in the map are connected by street segment with a high attraction betterness value. This segment in dark blue is characterized by relevant potential through movement. Then, in the second scenario, we have considered, we have increased the radius distance to 3,000 meters. So the network analysis showed the most convenient route for bicycles. Moreover, from this map, from to southeast to southwest, it is possible to identify a ring characterized by the street segment with the highest ebb values. The concentration, so from our studies, it matched that the concentration of schools in the north area of the historic center and the schools connected by street segment in dark blue with the high ebb values, and these schools are near the railway station, an important, relevant railway interchange point in a dark red circle. This represents an incentive to promote an integration between active transport modes and the train. In fact, and this study, this analysis provides input in order to define project intervention in order to promote improved pedestrian and bicycle mobility, in particular on the streets covering the last mile in order to reach the school. And this output can be used to classify the street segment and to select those considered as priority from an environmental, from a design point of view, in order to promote cycling and walking. The two railway lines cross the city of Potenza along with the north axis, south axis, represented by dashed lines in the map. Based on the outputs of our analysis, design solution could be the construction expansion of interchange car bus parks near the main vehicular entrance to Potenza in dark, in red circles in the map, and the upgrading of a city rail that could contribute to the reduction of a motorized vehicle traffic crossing the city. In fact, so the students that come from the other towns in Basilicata region could reach Potenza by bus and by train, and then they could reach schools by on foot and by bicycles, pedelecs, and the bikes. So the students could benefit from an intermodal solution. This study provides a pattern of low carbon access to school in the city of Potenza in order to implement a sustainable urban transport system. A sustainable reorganization, it is a first step towards a sustainable reorganization and rational management of urban mobility with view to an hybrid-oriented sustainable urban development based on the integration between active transport mode and public transport. Potenza could become in this Potenza. This represents a first step in order to make Potenza a sustainable city and community, satisfying the sustainable development goals of the United Nations 2030 agenda and the new urban agenda. Thanks for your attention.
Thank you very much, Giovanni. Great presentation. Are there any questions from the audience? It seems not. I have some questions or some things to add. In my city, children are quite often brought to school by their parents. They drive them by car, and this affects the traffic quite a lot. And one of the main reasons is that parents do not consider bicycle lanes very safe for kids, because the bicycle lanes are partly on the street. Did you take into consideration this scenario when you calculated your model?
In this scenario, we have analyzed the urban street network within the urban area of Potenza without considering the possibility. This study that in future this study could be integrated by other analysis in relation to street characteristics, the physical characteristics of the streets, in order to implement 30 kilometers. Zone areas, one earths, shared space, in order to implement and improve the use of active and soft transportation modes.
Mm-hmm. All right. Thank you very much. So if there are no more questions to this research, my suggestion would be that we move to the final presentation of this session, and this is.
I'm sorry,
Yep.
Valentin. Please, Giulia,
Yes.
stop the sharing of your screen, because the other relation has a problem. There is a button in the bottom of your screen, icon that you can click. Giulia? Giulia, are you hearing me?
Probably not.
Probably not. I think we can carry on with this presentation. It will overlap, I hope, over Giulia's screen. So the final presentation is called Green Chemistry, Circular Economy and Sustainable Development, an operational perspective to scale research results in SMEs practices. So,
okay, I will present.
Francesco, please go ahead.
Thank you. So this is how can I say, a preliminary step of transdisciplinary approach to the idea of circular economy that links experts from chemical faculties with territorial scientists in the University of Basilicata, who started thinking about. Can you see my screen? Yes, probably yes.
Yes,
okay.
Everything is fine.
Thinking about how to develop a network linking academic infrastructure with small medium enterprises operating in a very weak economic system like Basilicata region, in order to get advantages from the rising of circular economy approach in the primary sector, first of all, and in small manufacturing processes which are characterizing some specific place in Basilicata, connecting traditional manufacturing with the local resources and with the beauty of the places and so on. So how circular economy could develop, could become a driver in order to realize improvement and innovation for product and processes in small medium enterprises, but also as a driver in order to reinforce territorial promotion in the global market. The three keywords are green chemistry, circular economy, and sustainability. Green chemistry is representative of the background knowledge of the expert coming from the chemist department. Sustainability is a common ground of developing research, applied research, and green economy represents the concept that links together those elements and becomes a way to detect the need for system innovation at all level of productive systems, linking this framework to the efficient use of resources, to lower the carbon emission, to reduce environmentally damaging and so on, but also including the social role in this process. In fact, green economy needs to include the perception of users and consumers as aware users and consumers of goods and products in the integrated framework that represents the innovation that a small medium enterprise has to bring in its productive system in order to get advantages on the market. If we look at the general scale, today's world population requires more and more natural resources today than before. And this is a critical issue that is very closely linked with the waste emergency. So the idea of recover, reuse scraps and parts of the production process is a critical stage toward which at policy level, but at industrial level and the technological level, a lot of efforts is going to be paid in order to get the zero waste production. Actually, we have to say that we are far from achieve this kind of goal. And so we can identify a critical innovation demand at all levels of the production system. This demand for innovation should be supported with the technological transfer connecting research infrastructure and operators in order to results effective and to produce green innovation in the medium short terms. Green chemistry is a concept that comes from the clever idea of Paul Anastas, who deliver also some guidance and principles for green chemistry. But such principles are not only the principle for the green chemistry as a chemistry itself and not connected with the rest of the process. Because referring to the minimization of waste, referring to the effective use of resources of renewable raw materials and energy sources, the recourse of the use of safe substances in the human processes and so on represents the principle that could drive the actual human organization toward a sustainable target of development. So such principles are scalable and realize a driving framework in order to deliver innovation for the production approach, based to an innovation transfer that is still not fully exploited, connecting academic and research and industries. A lot of regulation comes out during the last decades. One key reference is the United Nations Conference of Sustainable Development in Rio, where the greening efforts comes out at the global scale. After that, many European directives on chemicals, substances, chemical risk, and so on had been produced and adopted in several countries, but the comprehensive framework is still far to be realized. So the idea is that today we have to speak of eco-innovation. No, there is a large development share for this approach, for the green innovation, and consequently there is the need to apply an operational approach regarding the primary production and manufacturing system. I have to say, from a territorial point of view, that such innovation demand becomes bigger in the weakest economic system, because the competitive advantages that could bring to operators may be relevant in order to change the destiny of such weak economic system. But in those contexts, is less explicit, because local operators are more engaged with the traditional approach in production and manufacturing, and the low income that comes from the global market for their product doesn't allow them to open their innovation capacities towards this green innovation. So the proactive perspective we defined together with other colleagues is to combine three areas of application. The first is the green chemistry and circular economy. It means to transfer some green chemistry innovation in actual manufacturing processes, especially in agro-food system, which means to apply very simple rules, very simple approach that comes from the connection, the collaboration, the knowledge sharing between academics and local operators, could bring great results in terms of improving the quality of the products and reinforcing their competitivity on the market. After that, the territorial perspective highlights the opportunity to work in building local supply chains, reinforcing the synergies between companies operating in the same areas. No, in this perspective, there is the opportunity to exploit the potential of local products and local raw materials that could be really typical of specific areas, in order to realize manufactured products that are still recognizable as specific origins. It is an important idea in order to support territorial marketing also. And after that, the connection between academics and operators should also reinforce the capacity of stimulate user and consumer awareness concerning the specific characteristics of a product, enhancing the willingness to pay even more for a product that respects a green innovation process and so on. And this becomes a competitive factor for who applies. The competitive advantages are well described in a MIT report that we cited, that we refers to in the report, that reports the experience of small enterprises who invested in green innovation and who realized several competitive advantages that are listed here in the slide. So, according also to McKinsey perspective concerning the green economy, there are many factors today that lead to a change in consumers and producer habits, making the circular economy increasingly attractive. So we are in the right moment to boost and to produce application in this sector, according to the scarcity of resources, to the advantages of technological advantages that produce new opportunities for the transition to a circular model, to the issues that comes from the growing urbanization that is leading to the centralization, to agglomeration of the flows of consumers' goods and so on. So this condition are also recognizable in peripheral contexts, such as Basilicata regions, where the European Commission measured a circular economy transition regarding only the 2% of the local operators, so a very few share of this transition. In most of European countries appears to be uniformly growing in this sector. Also, Italy, in order to be clever, and in Italy, Basilicata has specific behaviors which expresses a favorable tendency of local operators in order to invest in green processes, but there are still barriers that doesn't facilitate the connection between research and innovation centers that operates in the regions and local operators in order to build effective perspective and scenario. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Francesco. Are there any questions from the audience?
Can I?
Sure, please.
It's more than questions, it's 2 comments. The first comment has to do with the sentence, innovation demand is bigger in weak economic system. I think this is counterintuitive. And for instance, there's a lot of research on universities spillovers and innovation. And university spillover usually takes place where the economic systems are stronger. So I would like to hear more about that. And the second comment is about what in the literature is sometimes referred to as industrial symbiosis. So like using the waste from a kind of production cycle, and it becomes the material, input material for another industrial cycle. According to the literature, here, the biggest problem is how to put in contact the 2 cycles. Do you have any experience with that, or did you see anything in Basilicata that could help joining forces between the 2 industries?
Okay, Sabrina, thank you for a very interesting question. The first, how can I say? I make that affirmation that there is a huge innovation demand in the weakest system, because it comes from my direct experience that I delivered in this framework, contacting companies and starting thinking together a process in order to combine academic instances with production instances. And I understood that companies, also small companies, feels the need to interact with academic institution, research institution in general, because they know, they perceive that without innovation in their product and their process, their level of competitivity is going really in a disaster. No, is something that will be not recoverable in the medium short term, and this perception is concrete in weakest system where small operators fights day by day in order to survive and in order to exploit the value of their production. But they know that innovation could be the mean that could let them to be competitive in a wider market. But on the other hand, and I said it, this innovation demand is less explicit. So because the small operator is not habit to interact with the research and innovation structures, because he feels that this interaction needs more money than he can invest, because he needs he feels that his inside the capacity, technical capacity, cannot match with the academic level of interactions. So there are a lot of I may say even cultural barriers, no? Cultural, because if a system is not fitted in interacting with the academic infrastructure, they feel some restriction in doing that. And I look at small operators, not big operators, the small operators. And small operators are the microcosmos of weakest territorial productive system. After that, when I refer to local chains, is exactly the concept that you mentioned. But we know that not only the research of the partnership in sharing this discharged material in order to become second primary material and so on is a problem. Sometimes the problem of recycling materials comes from the quantity of the process. No, if you have small quantities, the recycling efficiency is really critical to be achieved. So in an economic system in which the production is very scattered, is organized in a very small operators, so small system of operators, you need to connect many operators in order to get the critical amount that makes you feasible a technological process for recovering, I don't know, milk discharge or something like that. No, and that's why you have to act with the idea of a territorial perception or the comprehensive perception of this system, in order to orient operator also to understand that the local potential could be that they have to put in to create a cluster connecting with those people, those places, and so on, in order to achieve the target that they need. This is a more practical results of the primary investigation that we are delivering in Basilicata, because the idea of this group is to build up a spin-off, an academic spin-off concerning this topic.
Thank you very much.
Okay, are there any other questions for this presentation? I wanted to ask something related somehow to Sabrina's first question. I understand from your presentation, Francesco, that there is a demand for critical innovation from the SMEs, and there is pressure on academia to deliver innovation in order to serve the needs of these small, medium-sized enterprises. I somehow understood from your answer to Sabrina's question that there is a cultural barrier for SMEs to ask the universities or the academia for the results of their research to implement. Did you take into consideration the other perspective, meaning to push the results of the academic research into the market?
Okay, Valentin. Yes, it is an alternative approach, no? But I believe that we are not in this case because we would like to support mainly the need of former production system, which is looking to reinforce their capacity to go on in the production to meet new standards concerning sustainability, greening, and so on, more than to exploit the potential of a new product, of a new technology, or of a new license that you can deliver in the academic system. This is a perspective. My point of view is different. I think that there is a potential, also a market potential for services that goes in the small medium enterprises, and with few and simple procedure, innovation of some procedure could help them in order to really get advantages in their current situation. Okay, so this is the scope. Of course, what you said is the traditional way of making spillovers and exploiting the potential of research products. But it already exists, no? It already exists. We have to take care also of the small productive system, which is really in a critical situation today.
Okay, thank you very much for your answers. Thank you all for presenting your researches and for attending this session. I believe we came to the end of it, and it's time to pass the mic for the next presentation. Yolanda, I guess, will chair the next session.
Thank you, Valentin.
My pleasure.
Thank you, Valentin, really.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, with pleasure.
Is Yolanda here?
Hello. Hello.
Hello, Yolanda.
I'm here, but can you see me?
Yes.
Yes. I wasn't sure that I'm in the right room or using the right technologies to attend and to chair the session.
Yes. Everything is perfect, Yolanda. Everything
okay.
is perfect. You are in the right. You are the right person in the right room with the right technology.
I was nervous because maybe I lost some information. I'm sorry for that, because some email. Lots of emails, they went to the spam, and I saw that from Sabrina's emails. I just realized that I have to chair the session.
So I'm a spammer, sorry.
No, it's okay, Sabrina. So I don't know how to start, but I think we have already 6:30. Yes, should we start?
Yes, please.
Yes. And I see on the list in the session for sustainability performance assessment, we have 2 presentations for this time. Yes, for the last session this evening. So I think I would like to invite for the presentation, I don't know who will present actually, from the long list of presenters. with the title Design of an Urban Atlas to Spread Information Concerning the Growth and Anthropic Settlement in Basilicata region. And there are several authors of the presentation: Giuseppe Faruolo, Luigi Santopietro, Lucia Saganetti, Angela Pirogallo, Francesco Scorza, and Beniamino Morgante. Yes?
I'm the presenter.
Okay.
I share the screen.
Okay, Luigi. Yes, nice to meet you, and I'm happy that you are here. And
Thank
so, floor is yours, and we will start with you will start with the presentation. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. Good afternoon to everybody. I'm Luigi Santopietro, and I'm an environmental engineer of Laboratory of Urban and Regional System Engineering of University of Basilicata. This research laid the groundwork for a careful evaluation of the settlement stock and effect that the spread of renewable energy sources has generated. We should assume that the spread of RES technology installation cannot be considered as a win-win process. The complexity of arguments and analysis related to soil consumption have been too simplified in order to make it accessible not only for expert users, but mainly for citizens and decision makers in order to gain effective communication and to reinforce the awareness concerning externalities on environmental and landscape values. An atlas can be represent an effective tool in order to show spatial analysis and research results concerning this complex domain connected with settlements, typologies, and dynamics at local scale through simple and reliable indicators showing current threats. The study area is Basilicata region, located in the south of Italy, and immediately in the table it can be observed that in the last 50 years there was a population decline versus growth in residential buildings. Starting from the data and results deriving from researches developed at the regional scale by Saganetti et al., the atlas has the objective to organize the information in order to make it expressive at a different scale, the municipal scale. Using SPX index into the urban atlas, the fundamental step is the calibration of the grid. In fact, there was a research about the best sides of the grid cell to choose applying SPX index. Testing different values of step length for the grid, the value of 250 meters has been chosen because it's the more appropriate to describe the fragmentation. Smaller grid resolutions have been excluded because they are not able to describe properly fragmentation at municipal scale and are not useful to draw up indicators for urban atlas. Using a grid cell with a step length of 2050 meters, the SPX index is computed for every municipality of Basilicata region, considering the evolution of settlement with respect to the evolution of population and the growing of rest plants. In this way, the information is collected into an information database to municipal scale, which form the urban atlas. Starting from 50s, the population of Basilicata region has gradually decreased. Instead, from 1999 to date, there is a change in trend between urban aggregates and population. From 2006, a significant increase of soil consumption has been given by res surface. SPX index has been computed for different areas of grid cell of 0.025 square kilometers. SPX index has been computed in two different steps. First, the SPX is computed for Basilicata region, then SPX is clipped for every municipality boundary to eliminate local errors due to the municipality boundary. The data processed presents for each municipality multiple elaborations. The elaborations were carried out for the years 1950, 1989, 1998, 2006, 2013, 2017. They are evolution of the buildings and urban aggregates, evolution of rest plans for the years 2006, 2013, and 2017, the table showing territory surface occupied by building stocks for usage categories, the graphs that compare the building stock with the evolution of rest installations compared to the evolution of the population. Sprinkling index with the mesh of 2050 meters of the building stocks combined with the rest plans. In the following feature, are presented as prototypes some elaborations drawn up for the municipality of Avigliano. In feature is represented the evolution of urban aggregates from 1989 to 2013, where is it possible note the continuous increase of the same at the expense of land consumption, with zooms on some areas of interest where this phenomenon has occurred more. For each municipality, there is a summary table showing data concerning surface occupied by building stocks divided by building use categories, while in the graphs shown are compared building stock with the evolution of rest installations related to evolution of population. In feature is represented urban fragmentation through the Sprinkling index. In this case, the urban fragmentation is related to 2013, where it's possible to notice an important fragmentation in different parts of the territory due to the increase sometimes of urban aggregates, but more and more frequently from the evolution of rest plants. Finally, atlas can help to understand how RES have contributed to the transformation of urban system with inevitable consequences on the landscape. The use of a urban atlas can be related to different aspects. To be a tool for local administrators, helping them to know the status and the evolution of land consumption or land use. Define regulatory frameworks having regional value, with the aim to achieve the ambitious goal of zero land consumption, and as a baseline to monitoring land consumption and to planning in several sectors. Concerning the spatial evaluations included as basic data in this work, future research development perspectives concerning the improvement of the methodology with the fragmentation caused by infrastructure in the region that are not valued in this work. Future perspectives are oriented to realize a web-based platform where users are able to visualize and retrieve data available to all of the majority of potential users. The idea is dissemination of the data through a free consulting service in order to allow the majority of potential users, and not only expert users, to take advantage from the atlas. The technological tools we are oriented to adopt is an WebGIS portal included OCS standards for maps and geodata sharing on the internet. Therefore, the aim is structured a GIS model in a co-design view as a help desk to decision-making with two specific functions: territorial planning and knowledge of the developments of urban fragmentation in order to reduce or mitigate the effects of urban expansion. Planning action aimed to increase urban fragmentation, supporting decisions undertaken by stakeholder or public administration. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Luigi, for your presentation. And maybe somebody has question to the presenter.
Yolanda, can I report a question that comes from a reviewer of the paper?
Okay.
Ana Clara Roca, which reads the paper and asked us, why do you want to do an atlas which is a very old way to represent information and so on, no? Because that's our idea. We want to really do an atlas of those data, because the awareness of local administration concerning those information is very low, and such information are very expressive if you compare the trend of local population with the trend of surfaces used for buildings and urban environments is very critical. So we want to do an atlas because our politicians, our decision makers, that are still linked to those kind of tools in order to get those information. This is quite critical, but that's the reason why we want to do an atlas.
Luigi?
Yeah.
Can you answer to the question Francesco gave from the reviewer?
We, as said by my professor Scorza, we want to we want to build a new way to represent this data for each municipality, and we want to build a GIS structure model to support decision makers and the local administrator to each municipality. Also, if this could see a strange way or an old way, but in the south of Italy and in Italy, a lot of the administrators are at this moment in 2020 linked to the papers and the real paper map, and not with only WebGIS models and so on. So it's a new way to support the decision makers and the local administrators.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. And the last one from this session, last but not least, we have also from Luigi Santopietro and Francesco Scorza, the authors of the presentation, A Place-Based Approach for the SICAP of Potenza Municipality, the case of green spaces system. So I hope that Luigi or Francesco will present. Yes?
The screen is seen?
Yes, we can.
Okay.
So floor is yours. Okay.
I'm already Luigi Santopietro. I'm an environmental engineer of Laboratory of Urban and Regional System Engineering of University of Basilicata. And so action plan for energy and sustainable climate represent an operational dimension of urban planning that organize investments and urban transformation processes outside the traditional urban planning instruments. In this work, a methodological approach for SICAP development is discussed in order to reinforce the link between energy and climate objectives, and action for the SICAP with the territorial dimension assessed through systems and targets from the very beginning of the planning process. The Covenant of Mayors actually is the world's largest movement for local climate and energy actions. Every signatory who join Covenant of Mayors share a common view in terms of decarbonization of territories, strengthening capacity to adapt to unavoidable climate change impacts. In Italy at this moment, the most adopted strategic energy plan at municipal level is SICAP. The SICAP development process is based on a very synthetic table of contents, and in the perspective of the authors, could reveal several weaknesses in the comprehensive structure linking objectives to action and indicators. Therefore, the methodological proposal developed in this work after the analytic cognitive insight on the individual territorial components related to the sector proposed by SICAP is oriented to develop a reasoning by systems. In other words, the sectorial breakdown of SICAP is overcome by promoting an integrated reading of this component into 5 systems to which multiple sectors are identified according to a relational scheme. Every system identified is related to a background map that represents the minimal process of knowledge. Every map is a result of GIS processing. The resulting elaborations allow to fill out the SICAP worksheet, adding to what is already provided by SICAP methodology, analytic cognitive insight, on the individual territorial components. The first step is the knowledge of the green space system available to find the more critical areas where to take action. The data are collected consulting the regional portal of Basilicata region, urban planning regulation of Potenza municipality, and orthophotos. Identifying the green space, they are distinguished between the green space inside and outside of urban boundary. The green space are classified according to several usage class as city parks, green space such as flower beds or green space between buildings, city parks and suburban parks in planning, urban garden, and rural areas. As example, green space outside the urban boundary classified as forest and shrub or herbaceous vegetation. An overall scheme of possible action for green system is shown in feature. Every action is related to several territorial targets to achieve the overall objective, and it's overcome the connection one by one between territorial targets and actions. In this work, efforts have chosen a place-based approach with the definition of territorial target that are physical objects present on the territory where implement the action provided by the objectives. These territorial targets are at the same time targets and the results of the developments of the provided action. At this moment, SICAP can be considered as urban planning tool at municipal or urban scale, able to develop sustainable transformation supported by a participative process. Potenza municipality, according to the annual leaderboard of Legambiente, an environmental organization, for the year 2018 is the 4th of greenest city in Italy for inhabitants per meter square. The green areas not always are accessible to the people for different reasons. Area with high slope, abandoned or degraded are green areas, and the green areas without a specific intended use able to become green space to restore to citizens. Risorgimento is one of the districts related to the expansion of Potenza municipality between years 1946 to 1970. In these districts, the green available over the years was left to itself and has lost its function as meeting place or improving the quality of urban life. Starting from the action proposed for the green space system, has been chosen some of these actions to engage in the district as a recovery of abandoned degraded areas or planting trees along the roads to improve urban microclimate. The work highlighted two potential issues in relation to the use of SICAP as planning tools for the transition of the cities to low carbon and climate responsive scenarios. As a sector-by-sector watertight approach, which sees the definition of actions exclusively related to the sector, as it convenient to identify systems on which to carry out analytical cognitive insight on the individual territorial components related to the sector proposed by SICAP, and to arrive at an intersystemic synthesis of the selection of the action. The definition of territorial targets, an innovative element proposed within the CCAP. Territorial targets represent real elements of territory on which the planned actions are implemented. This approach allows a special definition of the planned intervention, which will allow administrators and stakeholders to be able to manage, plan, and monitor interventions. This innovative approach to CCAP can be strengthened through participatory planning, involving local citizens, stakeholders, and decision makers to roll an active part in process. In Europe, there are some interesting experiences, such as Ronneby in the southern of Sweden, that show how connoisseurs, local associations across the municipality, can help green structure planning. In conclusion, the future developments that this work suggests are linked to deepening of the techniques and the method proposed for further case studies, to definition of flexible tools in management of data and information necessary to build scenarios for climate adaptation to different scales to effectively address the challenges that climate change calls us to undertake. The objectives of this process are contained in the main address documents on sustainable urban developments, which refers to a renewed urban planning oriented to the rationality of the governance processes of the city and the territory. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Luigi. So I have the same question for the audience. Maybe there are some questions. Do you have some questions to Luigi and Francesco? I see no raised hands. No. So maybe I can ask you this, the case of green space system from Basilicata region. This is already implemented, or do you have some plans? If this already implemented, which projects were implemented and how they were financed by the local government, by the national government, or by the private, or maybe some other sources?
I try to give the answer, Luigi. Okay.
Okay.
So we can collaborate in this way.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, in this study there are several basic works. For instance, concerning the green spaces in urban area, the classification on those green spaces seems to be a very easy thing, something that should be already available, but in practice it is not available. So the idea of going in deep into the classification of urban components, connecting such classification to specific action to be tackled in order to achieve a strategic objective is still something on which you have to produce examples, supports, studies in order to reinforce the governance process at urban level, especially when a lot of framework planning are asked to urban government to be adopted in order to participate in the global process, for instance, of saving energy, producing renewable energy, climate adaptation, and so on. And that's the case of CCAP, which comes from the Covenant of Measure, the new Covenant of Measure, and becomes the urban plan for sustainable energy and climate development of a city. We worked in this framework and we produced several starting elaboration concerning the knowledge of the town, of the Potenza town, and the connection to several activities and investments that the municipality should select in order to deliver a more sustainable city at the end. The funding opportunities comes from regional operational programs that apply the European structural funds, and for the Basilicata region, the share which is devoted to sustainable urban growth is even bigger than in other European region. So the opportunity to fund money in order to realize the intervention for the qualification of the urban components is really suitable. No, it's not something so difficult that it is not necessary to plan anything because you will never have the money to realize it. No, it's not the case. Probably you will get a lot of money, but you need to spend money effectively, no, demonstrating the results, monitoring the urban characteristics in order to deliver a better cities for their inhabitants. That's the situation.
Okay, thank you very much, Francesco, for your comprehensive answer. And do we have maybe other questions to the presenter or to previous presentation or to the last presentation? I don't see any raised hand. So I think I should thank you for the presenters, for the attendee this session for sustainable performance assessment. And I would like to wish you a very good evening and thank you for your participation.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Yolanda.
Thank you, Yolanda. Thank you.
Thank you.
And see you somewhere. Yes, it would be nice to meet you all. So good luck for you and enjoy the conference. Bye
So
bye.
I have also to thanks again Sabrina, because her spam was very effective up to you and Valentin, and you are here discussing with us. Thank you so much, really.
Okay. Thank you, Sabrina, and thank you, Francesco, and all of you.
Thank you all.
Bye bye. Have a nice evening.
And you too. Bye bye.
Bye bye.
Bye.